Let's take a look at how to multiply decimals with numbers up to 1,000. Okay, we don't know this number, right? We have a blank in the first spot. Some number times negative 13.2 gives us positive 52.8 as our answer. All right, so let's think about this. I like to think about the signs first and then work with the rest of the number. So notice I'm taking some number, I'm multiplying it by a negative number, and I'm getting a positive number as my answer. So first, would this number have to be positive or negative? Well, if it was positive, a positive times a negative would have given me a negative answer. So it must be negative, right? A negative times a negative gives me a positive answer. Now to think about the number value, well, what number times 13.2 would give me 52.8? Well, I can work backwards to figure that out. I can say 52.8 divided by 13.2, what does that give me? Because then that answer will be a number I can multiply by 13.2 to get 52.8. All right, so when you are dividing with decimals, it's usually not super easy to think how many times does 13.2 go into something. So it's helpful to move this decimal point one place so we can think of this number as 132. Now the rule is, however many places you moved the decimal point here, you have to do the same thing here. If this is 52.8, I would have to move my decimal point one place to put it after the 8. And of course, if I'm making that 528, that's the same thing as saying 528.0. So I can always fill in some zeros after there. Okay, well now I'm thinking how many times is 132 going to go into 528? Well, 5 would be a little too big, right? 100 would go into 505 times, but with the 32, that's going to go over it. So maybe 4. I think it's going to go in 4 times. Let's try that. Okay, well 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12, so I'm going to put the 2 and bring the 1 over. 4 times 1 is 4, plus the extra 1 is 5. Okay, well that gave me exactly 528, which means I have no remainder. So that would give me 4.0, or just 4. Okay, and we already had thought about our sign before. I had already put that it must be a negative, so that number must be negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 13.2 is going to give me positive 52.8. What number times 18.3 is going to equal 18.3? Well, notice these two numbers are exactly the same. So what is the only number I can multiply something by that doesn't change its value? Well, multiplying by 1 is the only thing that doesn't change a number's value. So this must be 1 times 18.3. Okay, what number times 2.3 is equal to negative 41.4? Let's think about our signs first. What number times a positive is going to give me a negative? Well, if this was positive, a positive times a positive would give me a positive answer. So the mystery number must be a negative, right? A negative times a positive gives me a negative answer. Okay, so I know it must be a negative. To figure out the number value part, I'm going to work backwards to figure out what times 2.3 would give me 41.4. And again, I'm ignoring the signs because I already figured out the sign. I could divide, right? 41.4 divided by 2.3 will tell me how many times 2.3 goes into 41.4. That means whatever number I get times 2.3 would give me 41.4. Okay, so working backwards here a little bit. Now, just like we did in the last problem, it's easier to think about whole numbers when you're dividing. So I'm going to move this decimal point one place to make this just a 23. And of course, I have to do the same thing on the number here. So I'm going to move this one place to make it a 414. So the decimal point in my answer would go here. And of course, you can think of this as 414.0. Okay, so let's divide. 23 does not go into 4, but 23 does go into 41. 23 is going to go into 41 only one time, right? Because if I said 2, that would be a little too big at 46. So it's only going to go in one time. Now notice I'm lining up over the 1 to show that 23 went into 41. Okay, and I'm going to subtract the 23 to see what I have left over. Okay, well, I'm going to have to borrow from this ones place. 11 minus 3 gives me 8. And 3 minus 2 gives me 1. Okay, well, 23 is not going to go into 18, but it is going to go into 184, right? I'm going to bring down that 4. Okay, well, I'm just going to think, how many times do I think 23 is going to go into 184? Well, let's see. If I said 23 times 10, that would be 230. Times 9, I think, is still going to be a little too big. So I'm kind of estimating here. I'm thinking like if I count by 20s, right, 20 goes into 100 5 times. So let's say maybe about 8. Okay, let's multiply 123 by 8 and see if that works. Okay, 8 times 3 is 24. So that's going to be a 4. I'm going to bring the 2 over. 8 times 2 is 16, plus the extra 2 is 18. Okay, so that actually worked out perfectly to give me 184. And I'm going to say that gives me a remainder of 0, so this is 18.0, right, or just 18. Now, I already figured out that it had to be a negative number, so it must be negative 18. Okay, 10 times what number would give us negative 243? All right, well, thinking about my sign, this number must be negative, right? A positive times a negative is going to give me a negative number. Otherwise, a positive times a positive would give me a positive answer. Now, multiplying by 10 moves my decimal point one place. So after I made my decimal point one place bigger, I got negative 243. Now keep in mind, this is the same thing as negative 243.0. So if that is one decimal point bigger than what it was before I multiplied by 10, well, think about moving this one place in the other direction. So this number must have been negative 24.3. So notice we can make this problem a little easier by thinking about place value instead of having to do the whole division problem when our number is 10, because we know multiplying by 10, right? If I said negative 243 times 10, I would move that one place to get negative 243.